Most people destroy their own power before anyone ever challenges them. They talk too much. They explain too much. They believe being understood is the same thing as being respected. It isn't. In reality, every unnecessary word you speak becomes a liability, something that can be remembered, repeated, twisted, and used against you when the moment is right. Today, we're breaking down Law 4 of the 48 Laws of Power: always say less than necessary. Not as ancient philosophy, but as a modern survival skill. This law decides who controls the room and who becomes exposed inside it. If you've ever talked yourself out of influence, trust, attraction, or authority without realizing how, this lesson will feel uncomfortably familiar. Stay until the end, because once you understand how silence really works, you'll never speak the same way again. The true power of strategic silence lies in its function as a psychological architecture, a constructed void that others feel compelled to fill. Human interaction operates on an expectation of verbal exchange, and when one party consciously withdraws from this rhythm, it creates a vacuum of uncertainty. This vacuum triggers discomfort in others, often leading them to overcompensate by revealing motives, conceding points, or exposing insecurities they intended to conceal. By becoming the holder of silence, you invert the dynamic. You shift from a reactive participant to an observant conductor, allowing others to perform their hand while yours remains unseen. This leverages a fundamental human bias, the fear of the unknown. When you are unreadable, people project onto you their own assumptions, often granting you greater depth, authority, and control than you have explicitly claimed. In professional ecosystems, this principle manifests as a rigorous hierarchy of information. Words are not merely communication, they are currency and leverage. The individual who fills managerial silence with unsolicited details, justifications, emotional context, speculative plans, is unknowingly trading their authority for validation. Each extra word provides a handle for critique and micromanagement. Conversely, the disciplined practitioner invests language with precision, offering only what is necessary to advance a specific objective. This controlled communication forces the room to orient around their terms, making their contributions appear more considered and their presence more formidable. It transforms a simple update into a strategic communique, preventing others from mapping the terrain of your uncertainties and ambitions. The educational arena reveals the long-term cost of premature exposure. The student who consistently vocalizes every thought publicly fixes their intellectual position, making their learning curve and evolving opinions a subject of common scrutiny. This transparency makes them predictable, allowing both instructors and peers to catalog their patterns and weaknesses. In contrast, strategic reserve functions as a cloak for development. The silent listener prioritizes absorption and analysis, using questions as tools rather than declarations as displays. This approach avoids early categorization, granting the flexibility to adapt and synthesize information privately. When such a student finally chooses to speak, their contribution, precisely because of its rarity, carries disproportionate weight and appears to emerge from a deeper well of unspoken competence. Within the fraught terrain of personal conflict and family dynamics, the law becomes a form of emotional jiu-jitsu. The instinct during tension is to talk to release pressure, to seek understanding, and to assert one's narrative. However, this emotional verbosity transforms intangible feelings into concrete ammunition, phrases that can be recalled, repurposed, and weaponized later. Strategic silence here is not a passive withdrawal but an active discipline of containment. It allows the other party to exhaust their emotional reserves while you conserve your strategic position. A well-timed silence forces the adversary to confront the void their own words create, often leading them to reveal deeper grievances or negotiate against themselves. In parenting, this translates to the power of clarity over negotiation. over-explanation teaches a child that rules are debatable, while calm, concise statements backed by consistent action establish an unshakable structure. Nowhere is the cost of superfluous speech more acutely dangerous than in negotiations and financial dealings. The party that speaks first, explains their needs, or rushes to fill a pause is fundamentally giving away leverage. They reveal their valuation, their urgency, and their thresholds of fear. Strategic silence, in this context, is an active tool of pressure. It creates a container for the other party's anxiety and impatience to manifest, often compelling them to improve an offer or reveal a hidden constraint without any concession on your part. Every unspoken word maintains your position's integrity, while every unnecessary explanation diminishes your perceived value and flexibility. The digital landscape of social media represents the mass-scale violation of this principle, where oversharing is mistaken for authenticity and transparency for connection. By publicly charting one's ambitions, frustrations, and reactions, an individual renders themselves utterly predictable and emotionally legible. This familiarity does not breed respect, it breeds disregard. It systematically dismantles mystique and authority. The powerful online presence is instead curated and deliberate, characterized more by listening and observation than by broadcast. A rare, considered statement amid a sea of noise carries immense gravity, while constant sharing dilutes personal brand into background static. Ultimately, mastering this law reframes every social environment as a test of provocation. Questions, accusations, and awkward pauses are not merely interactions, they are baited hooks designed to pull you into a space of verbal vulnerability. To resist the impulse to fill the silence is to retain control. This practice is not muteness but a form of rhetorical precision, where speech is deployed only when it can definitively shift the terrain in your favor. The chilling and empowering realization is that power seldom belongs to the holder of the best argument, it belongs to the holder of the best information, and nothing protects information, your plans, your weaknesses, your true position, like the disciplined, active, and calculated practice of saying less. One of the most revealing historical lessons behind Law 4 comes not from triumph, but from observation, specifically, from watching how intelligent, well-spoken men destroyed themselves simply by talking too much. During the Italian Renaissance, political courts were not places of open dialogue, they were pressure chambers. Every word spoken was remembered, repeated, distorted, and weaponized. Power did not belong to the most articulate man in the room, it belonged to the most unreadable. Machiavelli witnessed this pattern relentlessly in Florence, Rome, and the courts of powerful families like the Medici, the Borgias, and the Sforzas. Courtiers believed eloquence signaled intelligence and loyalty. In reality, it signaled exposure. The more a man spoke, the more angles his enemies gained. Speech revealed ambition. Tone revealed insecurity. Explanation revealed fear. And fear, once detected, became leverage. Machiavelli's own fall from power is one of the clearest demonstrations of this law. When the Medici returned to Florence in 1512, anyone associated with the previous Republican government became suspect overnight. Many former officials panicked. They rushed to defend themselves, over-explained their loyalty, named allies, justified past decisions, and swore devotion to the new regime. These men believed that transparency would save them. Instead, their words became evidence. Their explanations contradicted one another. Their emotional reactions exposed resentment. Their loyalty sounded rehearsed. One by one, they were imprisoned, exiled, or executed. Machiavelli took a different path, not because he was innocent, but because he understood power. When arrested and interrogated, he did not attempt to persuade. He did not defend his political philosophy. He did not explain his past influence or relationships. He answered only what was asked, briefly and without emotional color. He endured torture without theatrical protest. By offering so little, he denied his interrogators the material they needed to justify further punishment. His silence made him difficult to classify, and what cannot be classified cannot be decisively eliminated. Silence did not free him immediately, but it kept him alive. From this experience, Machiavelli learned something devastating: speech accelerates judgment. Silence delays it. And in volatile power environments, delay is survival. He later observed this same dynamic in Cesare Borgia, one of the most feared political figures of the era. Borgia was not dominant because he spoke forcefully, he was dominant because he spoke selectively. In negotiations, he allowed others to fill silence with nervous explanations, demands, and concessions. The more they spoke, the clearer their position became. Meanwhile, Borgia remained still. His restraint created psychological imbalance. Opponents felt compelled to talk just to relieve the tension. By the time they finished, Borgia knew exactly where they stood, and they knew nothing about him. Machiavelli noticed that silence did more than conceal information. It controlled tempo. Whoever speaks less controls the pace of interaction. Whoever controls pace controls pressure. And whoever controls pressure shapes outcomes. History repeatedly confirms this. Powerful rulers distrusted those who spoke too well. They favored men who listened, nodded, and revealed nothing. Excessive speech suggested hunger for recognition, ambition, or influence, all of which threatened authority. Silence, on the other hand, signaled discipline. A silent man could not easily be trapped, tested, or provoked into revealing opposition. This is why those who rose closest to power often appeared dull or unremarkable. They survived by being opaque. Machiavelli ultimately concluded that words are not neutral, they are commitments. Once spoken, they leave your control and enter the memory of others. They can be repeated without context, quoted without intent, and recalled at the most damaging moment. Silence creates no such trail. Silence leaves no evidence. Silence denies enemies ammunition. The most brutal truth Machiavelli uncovered is this: people do not punish what they do not understand. They punish what they can define, label, and accuse. Excessive speech makes you definable. Silence keeps you ambiguous. And in the struggle for power, ambiguity is protection. This is why Machiavelli warned that those who talk too much often mistake expression for strength. In reality, they are accelerating their own vulnerability. Power does not need to explain itself. Power observes. Power waits. Power speaks only when speech can no longer be used against it. And that is the historical core of Law 4. Those who survived turbulent eras were not the loudest or the cleverest, but the ones who understood that every unnecessary word shortens your lifespan in the game of power. Here's the truth most people never accept: power doesn't announce itself, justify itself, or explain itself. It waits. It listens. It lets others reveal who they are while remaining unreadable. The people who rise aren't always smarter or stronger, they're simply harder to pin down. Every extra word you speak gives someone else information. Every explanation shortens the distance between you and vulnerability. Silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. And restraint is what separates those who are controlled from those who control outcomes. If this changed how you see conversations, authority, or your own behavior, then you're already ahead of most people. Share this with someone who talks too much and doesn't realize the cost yet. Like the video so this message reaches people who need it but don't know why. And subscribe. because this channel isn't about motivation or comfort. It's about understanding power as it actually operates in the modern world. Once you see it, you don't go back.